Okay, so today we're going to go over Unit 1, Day 7 notes, which is solving equations by applying the distributive property. Now, as you already know, this is content that you should already know from 1. We already did this at the beginning of the school year. And secondly, you have already gone over this information from last year. So really, there's nothing new about this lesson except we haven't solved equations that involved applying the distributive property. But really, it's just one extra step that you have to do when solving equations, but it's not that complicated. So let's go ahead and start off by doing number 1 under the first section. Now, of course, if you have parentheses, the first thing you want to do is get rid of those parentheses. And in this part, I would like to get rid of the parentheses here. So I want to multiply -6 with everything inside of the parentheses. So -6 times a is -6a. -6 times 8 is -48. And just like that, the parentheses are gone. I'm not going to work out number 2 or 3. You can do that by yourself. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask me in class tomorrow. Now, under the second section, let's go ahead and start off with problem number 1. But before we move to problem number 1, I would like to give you a couple steps that will make this process of solving equations a lot easier. So if you want, somewhere down here in the bottom left corner, let's go ahead and write our steps. Step 1 is going to be get rid of the parentheses. Step 2, left side, combine like terms. Step 3, the right side, let's combine like terms. And step 4, move the constant. And the final step, step 5, I must have skipped the step by accident, but step 5 is move the coefficient. So there's my 5 steps that I can follow when I'm doing these problems. So let's use those steps to figure out problem number 1, okay? So problem number 1 says 4 times 5 plus 3m equals 128. Now, first thing I want to do is get rid of the parentheses. So that means I got to distribute the 4 with everything inside of the parentheses. So 4 times 5 is 20. 4 times 3m is 12m. And of course, the equals 128. Didn't mess with that, so I'm going to bring it down. Now, step 2, it says look at the left side and combine like terms. If you notice, the left side is what's in red. There's nothing to combine, so I don't have to worry about that. Step 3, look at the right side and combine like terms. There's nothing to combine. There's only one number on the right side, so we're good to go. Step 4, move the constant. Well, that means I got to move the number without the letter, so that's the 20. This is a positive 20, so when I move it to the other side, it becomes a minus 20. So now I have 12m equals 128 minus 20 is 108. Now the final step is to move the coefficient. Well, the coefficient is a 12. The opposite of multiplying by 12 is to divide by 12. So my final answer is 108 divided by 12, which is 9. So the solution to this equation is 9. Okay, let's move on to problem number 2. Now, if you notice, the 8 is at the end of the parentheses. You rarely see it like this. You will most likely see the problem look something like this, with the 8 at the front of the parentheses. So I went ahead and just moved it to the front. It really doesn't matter, but it just doesn't look right having it behind the parentheses. I'd rather have it at the front. So now, step 1, get rid of the parentheses, so I got to distribute this 8. So 8 times 11 is 88, 8 times 7z is 56z. And then, of course, bring down your equals, negative 48. Now, step 2 and step 3 is to combine like terms on both sides. So look at the left side. There's nothing that you can combine on the left side. Look at the right side. Nothing as well. So I can skip those 2 steps. Step 4, move the constant. Once again, the 88. When I move it to the other side, it becomes a minus 88. So now we have 56z equals negative 48 minus 88 is negative 136. Now the last step, move the coefficient. The coefficient in this problem is 56. So the opposite of multiplying by 56, dividing by 56. So when I do negative 136 divided by 56, you will get a decimal. So you have the option of either doing negative 2.4 as your decimal answer, or if you would like to leave it as an improper fraction, it's negative 17 over 7. So 17 over 7. And it's negative, okay? So there's my answer for that equation. Moving on to example 4. First step, get rid of the parentheses. So I would like to distribute the 16 with everything inside of the parentheses. So 16 times 3 is 48. 16 times negative 5h is negative 80h. Of course, you didn't touch the plus 17, so bring it down, the equals, or the negative 15. Now, step 2, look at the left side and see if you can combine like terms. Now, for this specific problem, there is like terms. So let's look. Well, if you notice the 48 and the 17, we can combine those two because they're both constants. So what is 48 plus 17? 65. The negative 80h, can't do anything with that, so bring it down. Of course, bring down your equal sign. And we have completed step 2. Now step 3, look at the right side and see if you can combine like terms. There's only one number. There's nothing to combine. So just go ahead and bring that down. Now, step 4, move the constant. You got to decide which one's the constant, the 65 or the 15. And obviously it's the 65 because we're trying to move everything away from the h. So when I move the 65 to the other side, I have to do the opposite of a plus 65, which is a minus 65. Therefore, we're left with negative 80h equals negative 15 minus 65 is negative 80. Now, step 5, move the coefficient. So to move the coefficient, the original operation is multiplying by negative 80. So the opposite is to divide by negative 80. So when I do that, I'm left with h equals, a negative divided by negative is a positive, 80 divided by 80 is 1. So my answer is h equals positive 1. Okay, let's go ahead and flip to the back. We are going to do one more example on these notes. All the other problems you are welcome to work out by yourself. If you would like to see the answers, or if you would like for me to go over one specific problem with you, do ask me tomorrow in class. But for our final example, we're going to do example number 8. And this has a fraction. Now, if you remember, I've told you many times that if you have a fraction, the best thing you want to do is convert it into a decimal. Only if that decimal converts into a very finite, nice decimal. So an example will be 1/2 from example 7. That's a good decimal. So 1/2 as a decimal is 0.5. It stops, it doesn't go on forever, it doesn't look messy, it's simple, straightforward, nice. That's the type of fractions I want to convert into decimals. But now, if we have something like a third, if you think about it, as a decimal is 0.33333 forever and ever and ever. That's a messy decimal. It goes on forever. It repeats. It's too much to deal with. That's something I don't want to deal with. So my best option is to just leave 1/3 as a fraction. This will be an example where the fraction doesn't necessarily need to be changed into a decimal to make the problem easier. Now, of course, for number 7, I would have definitely changed that 1/2 into a decimal. But for number 8, that fraction as a decimal is too messy. So I'm just going to leave it as a fraction. Now, step 1. Let's distribute the 1/3 with everything inside the parentheses so we can get rid of the parentheses. So 1/3 times 18x is 6x. 1/3 times 1,800 is 600. Now, of course, you then mess with the -3 and the equals 837, so bring that down. Step 2, left side, combine your like terms. Well, if you notice, on the left side, we do have 2 like terms. We have the 600 and the -3. So the 600 minus 3 is a positive 597. Now, didn't mess with the 6x, so bring that down. Bring down your equal sign. And then step 3 tells you to look at the right side to see if there's any like terms. Well, if you look at the right side, there's only one number. There's nothing to combine. So I'm going to bring that down. So there's my new equation. 6x plus 597 equals 837. Now, step 4, move the constant. In this situation, that's the 597 needs to be moved to the other side. So the opposite of a positive 597 is a minus 597. So I'm left with 6x equals 837 minus 597 is 240. And then the final step to this problem is move the coefficient. So the opposite of multiplying by 6 is to divide by 6. So my final answer is x equals 240 divided by 6 is just 40. So my final answer is x equals 40. Okay, if you have any questions about today's lesson, please do not hesitate to ask me tomorrow in class.